All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here. From the Q Research Board's January 29, 2026, federal agents executed a search warrant connected to election-related records in Fulton County, Georgia, according to reporting from major outlets. The Fulton County Elections Office has been under intense public scrutiny since the 2020 election, and this search adds a new federal step to the story. Officials have not publicly laid out full details of what was seized or what charges, if any, are being pursued. More updates are expected as documents and court filings become public. Federal Reserve officials held interest rates steady on January 28th, keeping the benchmark federal funds rate in a target range of roughly 3.5% to 3.75%. In its statement, the Fed said it will keep watching inflation and the labor market before making further moves, and Chair Jerome Powell emphasized a data-driven approach. Markets largely took the decision in stride, with investors now focused on when the first rate cut of 2026 could arrive. Gold surged to a fresh record on January 28th, with futures trading above $5,300 an ounce in a sharp one-day move. Analysts tied the jump to demand for safe haven assets, a weaker dollar, and uncertainty around the path of U.S. interest rates. The rally has also been linked to central banks increasing gold reserves and investors hedging against geopolitical and financial risks. Silver also spiked on January 28th, rising sharply alongside gold and logging one of its strongest sessions in years. The move reflects a mix of safe haven buying and strong demand expectations tied to industrial uses, including electronics and energy-related manufacturing. Traders are watching whether silver can hold these levels or if volatility will take prices back down quickly. A small passenger aircraft crashed in northeastern Colombia on January 28th, killing all 15 people on board, including a sitting congressman. Authorities said the plane lost contact shortly after takeoff and went down in a remote area near the Venezuela border. Investigators have not announced a cause yet, and recovery operations have been complicated by terrain and weather conditions. The White House released video of President Trump delivering remarks tied to Trump accounts on January 28th. The event was presented as part of a broader administration push on household finances and economic messaging. Full video of the remarks was posted through official White House channels, and further policy details are expected through follow-up agency guidance and congressional activity. New reporting says President Trump has hung a photo of himself with Russian President Vladimir Putin in a newly remodeled White House room, drawing attention to the symbolism of the display. The photo is tied to a prior summit and has fueled debate over the tone of U.S.-Russia relations. The White House has described rotating photos with world leaders as standard practice. New global steel production figures show the United States produced more crude steel than Japan in 2025, moving the U.S. into the number 3 spot worldwide behind China and India. The data shows U.S. output rose while Japan's fell compared with the prior year. The figures are being closely watched as a signal of industrial demand and the impact of trade and manufacturing policy. In the Russia-Ukraine peace track, Reuters reports Russian President Vladimir Putin held late-night talks with U.S. envoys and agreed to proceed with follow-on negotiations involving Russia, the United States, and Ukraine in Abu Dhabi. Russia has continued to frame territorial demands as central to any settlement, while Ukraine has rejected surrendering territory. The next round of talks is expected to focus on security arrangements and the core territorial dispute. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told senators on January 28th that the administration does not currently plan additional U.S. military action in Venezuela, while arguing progress is being made toward U.S. objectives. Rubio described a strategy tied to political transition and control over oil revenue flows, while lawmakers pressed him on legality, transparency, and the risk of long-term entanglement. The hearing underscored sharp divisions over executive authority and the scope of U.S. involvement. The Supreme Court is set to consider whether to take up President Trump's petition related to the civil judgment involving writer E. Jean Carroll. The justices are expected to discuss the request at an upcoming conference after lower court proceedings left the verdict in place. If the court takes the case, it would add a major legal fight to the court's docket in 2026. In Niger, residents in the capital city of Niamey reported loud explosions and heavy gunfire near the main airport overnight into Thursday morning. The airport is a strategic site with military significance, and witnesses said the incident lasted roughly 2 hours before calm returned. Officials have not yet provided a full public explanation, and it remains unclear who was responsible or what damage resulted. Russian officials are floating the idea of reopening a humanitarian border crossing point with Ukraine to allow family reunifications and civilian movement. The proposal was described as a humanitarian measure aimed at helping people return home and reconnect with relatives. There is no public confirmation yet of Ukrainian agreement or a timeline for implementation. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has declined to say whether he will remain on the Fed's board after his term as chair ends in mid-May 2026. Reporting says the question has taken on added weight amid a Justice Department investigation tied to Powell's past testimony regarding a Fed building renovation. The issue has intensified debate over political pressure and the Fed's independence as the U.S. approaches a new leadership transition at the central bank. U.S. markets hit a major milestone as the S&P 500 briefly crossed 7,000 for the first time on January 28, 2026. Reporting says the move was driven by continued investor optimism around artificial intelligence, strong expectations for big tech earnings, and hopes the Federal Reserve could cut rates later this year. The index later finished just under 7,000, but the message from markets was clear. AI-driven growth remains the dominant story on Wall Street. The SAVE Act is back in the spotlight in Washington. The bill would require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. Supporters argue it strengthens election integrity and prevents non-citizen voting. Critics argue it could create major registration hurdles for eligible citizens who do not have documents readily available. The bill's status and next steps depend on congressional scheduling and votes in both chambers. Iran has executed Hamidreza Sabet Esmailipour, who Iranian authorities accused of spying for Israel's Mossad, according to multiple international reports. Iranian judiciary-linked outlets said the Supreme Court upheld the death sentence and claimed the case involved cooperation with a hostile intelligence service and transfer of information. Outside observers and rights groups often challenge Iran's due process standards in national security cases. The execution is likely to further intensify regional tensions. The U.S. Department of the Air Force has officially adopted GenAI.mil as its enterprise generative AI platform for both the Air Force and Space Force, according to an announcement shared publicly by senior officials. The move signals a push to standardize approved AI tools across the services, consolidate legacy systems, and centralize governance for responsible use. The platform is part of the broader Defense Department effort to deploy generative AI at scale while controlling security and compliance risks. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz has rejected Ukraine's push for a concrete date for EU membership, with reports citing him dismissing the idea of accession as soon as January 1, 2027. Merz said EU entry requires meeting established criteria and that the process takes time. The comments land as Ukraine continues lobbying allies for faster integration with European institutions, while the war and governance reforms remain central issues in the accession debate. The UK's Keir Starmer is in China this week for a multi-day visit and high-level talks with President Xi Jinping as the UK pushes a reset in relations and deeper economic ties. Reports say the trip includes business leaders and focuses on trade and investment, while also raising tougher issues like security and human rights. The visit is being framed as the first by a UK Prime Minister in roughly 8 years, with both sides signaling a more pragmatic, transactional relationship going forward.
At shop.isawaya.com, everything you buy supports Akun.top, the place where people talk freely no matter what. Check out our Akun Honey Pot, a jar of yummy honey that's as strong as your voice. Put it on toast or in tea. It's not just honey, it's freedom in every bite. Then there's Akoon Butter, a smooth handmade skin cream that makes you feel good while you fight for what's right. Awesome wood and pieces for display only. Hang them up or set them out. They're for showing off Akoon's tough spirit. Want to help even more? Get a Proto membership. So go to shop.isitwhatyou.com now and grab some goodies. Help Akoon.top keep free speech alive, and let's keep the ideas flowing loud and free.
All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Board's January 29, 2026. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says the Trump administration has threatened him with a criminal indictment, according to Reuters reporting from January 12th. The report ties the dispute to scrutiny over Powell's prior testimony related to a Fed building renovation. The story is raising major questions about political pressure on the central bank and what it means for Fed independence going into Powell's leadership transition later this year. Internationally, the United Kingdom is pursuing a more direct economic engagement track with China, with Prime Minister Keir Starmer's visit framed as a push for trade and investment discussions alongside security concerns. Analysts say the trip signals a pragmatic approach aimed at stabilizing relations. The UK is expected to raise strategic issues, but the center of gravity of the visit appears to be economics, market access, and bilateral cooperation where interests overlap. Hassan Sain, the U.S. Coast Guard has launched Operation Renew 2026 in the Northeast, a winter mission focused on keeping heating oil moving during the coldest months. The Coast Guard says the effort prioritizes ice-breaking support, port access, and maritime safety so supply chains keep working when waterways freeze. Officials describe it as a public safety and economic stability mission affecting tens of millions of residents. Federal lawmakers reject an amendment on January 14th that would have cut funding for the National Endowment for Democracy. The roll call record shows the amendment failed, and reporting around the vote says 81 House Republicans joined Democrats to defeat it. Supporters of the amendment argued NED funding should be eliminated. Opponents argued the program supports U.S. interests overseas. The exact list of members is available through the House Clerk's official vote record and related reporting. In Maple Grove, Minnesota, police say 26 people were arrested after a protest outside a Spring Hill Suites hotel rumored to be housing federal agents. Police report the crowd escalated into property damage and alleged assaults on officers, prompting dispersal orders and arrests. Multiple agencies responded to the scene. Prosecutors are expected to sort charges case by case, and law enforcement says peaceful protest is protected, but violence and vandalism are not. White House Border Czar Tom Homan is scheduled to hold a press conference in Minneapolis today, according to local outlets. Reporting says Homan traveled to Minnesota to oversee federal immigration operations after public backlash and leadership changes inside DHS enforcement efforts. Officials say the briefing will address operational status, coordination with local leaders, and next steps. The event is expected to draw heavy media attention amid ongoing protests and heightened security. A Nashville family says their homeowners association told them to remove a generator or face fines while they were dealing with power outages and freezing conditions from an ice storm. The family says the generator was being used for emergency heat. Local reporting says the dispute is now public, raising questions about HOA rules during emergencies. The HOA has not publicly laid out a detailed explanation beyond citing neighborhood restrictions. JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America say they will match the U.S. government's planned $1,000 seed contribution for Trump accounts for eligible employees' children. Reuters reports the accounts are designed to be invested in low-cost index funds, with additional contributions allowed within limits. The banks say the goal is long-term wealth building for families, tied to a new federal savings and investment initiative. Turning Point USA announced support for the Trump Accounts program, including matching contributions tied to eligible employee newborns. Reporting says the group plans to provide a dollar-for-dollar match of the $1,000 government seed amount in qualifying cases. Backers say it promotes family formation and savings. Critics question the structure and the politics around the program, but the basic mechanics involve federally seeded accounts and optional private matching. Nicki Minaj appeared at a Trump accounts-related event in Washington, drawing major attention and a wave of media coverage. Reporting says she publicly praised President Trump and signaled support for the accounts program. The appearance was treated as a political and cultural moment, with outlets highlighting both her remarks and the unusual nature of a superstar entertainer taking a visible role in a policy-themed event. Here's how Trump accounts are being described in reporting. A federal program that provides a $1,000 starter contribution for children born during a defined window with a valid Social Security number and invests the funds with tax advantages. Reuters reports the planned launch date is July 4, 2026, and that eligibility in the bill covers births from 2025 through 2028. Private employers and firms are also signaling they may add matching funds. The federal government's AI and data handling rules are under renewed scrutiny after reporting described a senior U.S. cybersecurity incident involving sensitive information entered into a public AI tool. The coverage highlights the practical risk. Once restricted material is entered into an external system, it may be stored, processed, or exposed outside approved channels. Agencies are now being pressed to tighten training, controls, and technical safeguards as generative AI adoption spreads. Overnight explosions and heavy gunfire were reported near Niger's main airport in the capital, Niamey. Residents told reporters the incident began around midnight and lasted roughly 2 hours, with unverified videos showing flashes and fires near the airport area. Niger's military-led government has not released full details yet, and it remains unclear who carried out the attack or what damage was done. Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar was attacked at a town hall after a man approached and sprayed her with an unknown liquid using a syringe-like device. Reporting says the suspect was tackled and arrested, and Omar continued speaking afterward. Authorities have not publicly confirmed the exact substance, but the incident is being treated as an assault and has prompted renewed security concerns for public officials. Anons debate whether this was potentially a political stunt. In Minneapolis, dozens of protesters were detained outside the Graduate Hotel near the University of Minnesota after a late-night demonstration tied to federal immigration enforcement rumors. Local reporting says officers ordered the crowd to disperse, citing noise and public safety concerns, then made arrests as the situation escalated. Organizers say they were protesting federal actions. Police say enforcement was tied to violations and refusal to disperse.
Every voice matters. The power of free speech is more important than ever. Imagine a place where you can share your thoughts freely, explore new ideas, and engage in meaningful conversations anonymously. With online anonymity, you can express yourself without fear of judgment. It's about freedom, creativity, and connection. Join the conversation that matters. Embrace your voice. Celebrate your freedom. Visit 8kun.top today. That's 8kun.top.
That's all for now. Stay alert, stay informed, and never hand your thinking over to anyone on a screen, including me. God bless you, God bless our troops, and God bless the United States of America. See you soon.